Hello, good morning, and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis platform. I'm your host, Samson Ladi Anyenini. Now, soldiers, the army, were asked by who we don't know yet, of course, from the very top, because of how the command of the army is concerned, to go to a jura because young men were protesting the murder of their friend. They went there, and what did they do? They shot into the air, took aim, and shot and killed people. We can't say it, that they killed them, that we don't know who killed them. How can we continue to do this to ourselves in this society? They killed them, plain and simple. So 2 people have been killed in Ejura. Then 72 hours after, in Wa, another group of soldiers hit the streets. Their phone has been stolen, we are told. So what do? Anybody they find on their way is stopped, slapped, pulled, and pushed into a gutter, kicked until they are satisfied. Thankfully, in these 2 events, the cameras were there, so nobody is denying. What should happen? Promises? Committees? Then what? How about this approach in fighting crowd? We deal with all the angles concerned in this matter. The matters of rents, we will be empowering, educating you on what you can do and cannot do as a landlord, and the rights and privileges of you, the tenants. Your rent is expired. You can't afford to pay the next rent. Can you be thrown out just like that? The law says no. But what is happening? Young men can't afford rent because they are exorbitant and everybody is charging what they want. Does the law allow that? No. 20 million housing deficits for this country. How do we resolve these issues? We'll be right back to deal with the vexed matters. We have a 2 million housing deficit.
Yeah.
2 million.
Yeah.
That's the official number, but it should be more. So that was my producer, Samuel Dami, standing by me and responding, yeah. Because I had said 20 million, I slipped. And he was here to hit me with the hammer. Well, in my take, very briefly, I say, watch these things. Watch these things. We have made people to squat on the streets, and we have made them sweep. And we look on gleefully. We are happy about that because we feel that is how we can punish them for refusing to use a footbridge. It doesn't matter that there is a law that says when someone doesn't use a footbridge, this is how to deal with them. So the Accra mayor, doing a very good job, goes around, gets a few people, they stand around Medina Zongo with canes, with whips. To whip who? In a democracy? And they are picking people up, some very elderly. I look at them and I'm ashamed of myself to be a citizen of this country. And they make them squat. Think about it before you start your propagandist defense that you do without thinking. If you were your father who made a mistake and was made to squat on the street while everybody driving past watched him, will you be happy? If it were your mother who had to squat and made to sweep that dust when they had dressed up going to work, will you be happy? Because they erred? And who made their crime? I keep saying mayor, the regional minister. Who made him a judge and a police to pick people and punish them instantly? And who said that is a punishment under our law? You have been clapping for him. That's fine. Because you refuse to think that it could be you. And that the law doesn't allow it. And that in a democracy, in a country where we say we are not dealing with a failed state, that doesn't happen. Then, ministers got out and said, doing another good job, they are fighting Galamsey. So, people's excavators were bent at sight. What does the law say? The law says that is not how to deal with it. You've been clapping for them because you are not affected. You are affected. Guess what? There's a judgment debt. 15 million. Not Ghana cedis. US dollars. For what reason? For a similar situation. Who is going to pay? Your tax. Why should you be paying when you appointed somebody to take care of a situation and they bypassed the law, threw the law aside, and did it the way they wanted, unlawfully, and yet you must pay for it? Well, if soldiers are hitting the streets and beating up people, if they are aiming at demonstrators who are running away and shooting and killing them, begin to think about the consequences of acting lawlessly. Some of those whose excavators have been seized have correct licenses and have been doing the right things. You know why they are not shouting? Because they are afraid of the mob, of the masses against them. But guess what? In due course, they will hit the courts, and the courts will uphold their rights. In fact, attorney generals should not use our money to go defend such things. Just watch these things. That's my take. We'll be right back to deal with the matters that have come out from Ejura and Wa, and look at the philosophy behind the operations of the military and the police generally, and the issues of rent. People are suffering. There are laws that allow us to keep the state in a way that everybody will be happy and have decent accommodation. But the laws are not obeyed. There's a rent department empowered to help. But are they empowered enough? We'll be right back. You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, as you know, we always put Ghana first. And it's brought to you by a Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner. MTN, everywhere you go. Aseshi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders for Africa. Robert and Sons, seeing is believing. Waylead, home is where you start from. Star Assurance, your solid partner. First Code Management Services. Industry, get it right. The New School, knowledge, compassion, leadership. Duroplast, where Duroplast goes, water flows. Thank you very much, Rafiq Salam, correspondent joining us from Wa. Good morning.
Morning, Samson.
Great. And let me say good morning to Professor Kwesi also. All right, we'll speak to you and get to Professor Kwesi. And I can assure you there are just too many of you who are too eager to have the discussion on rent. and there's a lot of complaints already coming up about how particularly landlords are abusing you. I can assure you we will have a very good discussion that helps you and helps also the landlords. And in fact, the state, the nation has taken some steps to review the laws and to ensure that they will bite a lot more. So stay tuned in. And PK is sending me a message from Elembele, and he says that as many as 15 family members are seated, ready for Newsfile and are watching. Thank you very much. Now, Rafiq, we understand that one of the survivors of one of those who was assaulted is gone through surgery. What do you know about it?
The surgery took place about an hour ago at the Upper West Regional Hospital. You know, initially, 29-year-old organizer Gafur Mahama was hospitalized at the Wa Municipal Hospital, and so he was referred yesterday in the afternoon after the Chief of Army Staff went to the hospital, and so he was referred to the Upper West Regional Hospital. And this morning, the medical director of the Upper West Regional Hospital, orthopedic, Dr. Robert Amesia, conducted the surgery on him. It took him about 11-12 minutes to finish the surgery. And as I speak to you now, he's been wheeled to the recovery room, after which he was sent to the male ward.
Very chilling. Rafiq, so how many people do we still have in hospital now? How many have been discharged? And what do you know about their conditions?
For now, initially at the Wa Municipal Hospital, the Thursday, that very Thursday, about a dozen of persons were sent there. And so 10 of them were treated for minor charges, and only 2 were remaining. And so as of yesterday, it was only Gafur Mahama who was at the hospital. And so he's the one that they have taken to the regional hospital for him to go under the knife. And so for now, I'm quite sure I know of only one person, and who is Gafur Mahama.
Give us a sense of the feeling within the communities, particularly after the military high command and all those people came there to talk to the chief, apologize to the people, and gave an assurance that these rogue elements in the military will be dealt with.
The community is still recovering from that shock, because the people were shocked to the marrow about that incident that occurred, because they didn't believe that things like that could happen in Wa. As the Chief of Army Staff himself stated that Wa is a peaceful place. Any program that the military want to embark on, and they bring it to Wa here, that program is embraced by the people. He even cited an instance last year. The whole military high command has to do their retreat at the Royal Cozy Hill Hotel at Jiruba, and they were looking for an opportunity to come and say thank you to the people for supporting them, only for this unfortunate incident to happen. And so he's saying that they have this cordial relationship with the community, and then they are not really happy with the way things went. But he's also blaming it on some recruits that they just passed out on. They only came to work only 4 days. They spent only 4 days, and they were the people who committed these alleged atrocities on the people. But the town is gradually recovering from that shock. But they hope, their prayer is that the committee that they said will be set up will come up with a proof, and then all those people who are found culpable punished.
From what we saw, Rafiq, how many officers did you count? And beyond the video we have, did you know of an extra number of these, I don't want to call them soldiers because they don't deserve the name. How many are we talking about?
We are talking about 4 dozen of soldiers who came into town to do this act. About 48, 50 of them, men and women, they came and then did this act.
All right. Rafiq, thank you very much for your time this morning. Let me go to Professor Kwesi Enin, and of course, the committee has been set up. The military high command, according to the minister, Dominic Nitiwo, he says he gave the marching orders, and they went there to apologize to the chiefs and people and to assure them that the right things will be done and that this will not happen again. Professor Enin, I don't know if you know that, first of all, these people had already been stripped of their ropes even before this happened, like it would have happened to any, ordinary person who find themselves in a situation in a certain employment. You will first be interdicted. Get out of this place before we deal with you.
Well, I think, Samson, it's a reflection of leadership. I've just been talking to some people this morning, and I said, if you see the manner in which Adria has been dealt with and the speed with which Kwa has been dealt with, it shows that leadership does matter. And when that leadership recognizes that the manner in which things are occurring needs swift, decisive implementation of the existing rules and regulations, then it must be used. But also that there's a recognition that when those who are enjoined by the state to protect the citizenry themselves fail to deliver on their protection mandate, then the state must step in very quickly to send signals that it does care, that it doesn't condone the abuse of its citizens, and that it's also willing to apologize and to make restitution. But something, let me make another point. These are recruits who have just passed out 4 days before. What is the nature of the institutional culture that 4 days after training, you think you can come to town and behave this way? So that we are not talking about the 4 dozen individuals. And something, you ought to have allowed Rafik to end with his wow, because when I thought,
You're right about that.
The institutional order, and what have they been taught? That 4 days after passing out, they think they are now wearing a uniform, and that institution has a culture that legitimizes the brutalization of civilians whose taxes pay them. So I think once more, I will appeal to my friend, the defense minister, and certainly the chief of the army staff, that probably we need to go back to look at the training manuals and examine institutional culture.
Prof, before we get there, elsewhere, by now, I can imagine how many people would have resigned. But as we speak, most certainly nobody is going to resign. And even if you are not careful, if you are not lucky, nobody will get any sanction. Can you predict that those who had these men would suffer any consequence?
I mean, there are different ways in which consequences can play a role. One of them is that Parliament can call the appropriate ministers to appear before them, and Parliament can sanction them by, telling them to ensure that they implement and then use, the rules that are available. So although we are not seeing resignation, Samson, the sheer weight and volume of social media responses and conversation is generating a certain response that is otherwise unusual.
All right. Prof, hold on for me. For those of you who are just waking up to this news and perhaps have not seen what we are talking about, this is why I'm showing you the footage now. So here you have what you may call Mahama Kambu. That's what they popularly call them. There are a lot of them in the area, particularly in the northern part of the country. And you see the soldiers, they stopped and they pulled somebody to the back there. Right. So I don't know what they want to do to him, except that you want to kill him. So they have left him and they are moving on.
So you just have to brutalize this person without even telling him the reason why you are really assaulting him.
Right. So the one who is taking the video is asking questions. You are assaulting the people without even telling them what their crime is. And please forgive us what you are looking at. Someone has been put in the gutter. There are a number of them lined up in there. And you can see this guy, right. So it's been a very difficult sight for me to watch because I can't imagine that this is happening in Ghana. And as we speak, there's no announcement that some people have been cleared off even before any formal actions will take place. So, yes, you are watching. The track blocks our view, but we can see they are beating him up. Right. So he was brought down from his motorbike and beaten. So this is only a portion of what somebody captured. This is a journalist in the region who captured this portion. We are told of other situations where people were just stopped. So you can see anywhere the Mahama Kambus come, they just stop them, people get down. So they stop them and make them lie prostrate. And we are told that they were actually rolling on the dusty road in the middle of town. And that's what they were doing to very innocent citizens, vulnerable citizens, people who they cannot point a finger at for having done any wrong. You know? Okay, so I think it's enough. Let's not see this again. Thank you very much. We can end it there and then have Koscielny to speak to us. Yes, but we had the Regional Coordinating Council's PRO. He was informed and he said he walked to the place, he got to the place, and he was also assaulted until somebody intervened and told these guys that you are beating the Regional Coordinating Council's PRO. So let's hear what he had to say, Mr. Awune.
Even do anything. They just gonna say, what is the bed? The guys are what bed? That this is not a bed, like bed place. So they started slapping the guy, slapping all over the place, and they even asked the rest of them that was standing there that they should come out and lie down. Big men, they were even riding motorbike. They stopped them and said they should lie down on the floor, stepping on others. Then they even broke one guy their hand.
We were lying down and people were beaten mercilessly. Who gave the authority to do that? We are indeed citizens of this country and we are willing to go by the laws in this country. But we can't tolerate some of these things. Enough is enough.
Some of them saw me filming us. So they head towards our vehicle. They were saying that you are filming us. Who is filming? Why are you filming us? And I said, oh, before the NADMO director could talk, they dragged him out of his car, collected his phones. They collected the NADMO regional director's phone and dragged him out of the car. They asked for me. When I turned to look at the other side, they held my shirt, pulled me out of the car. And when they pulled me out, they were asking me, I'm the one videoing them. Before I could realize, they kept some object, hit my head 3 times on the head.
All right, so that's Mr. Awune, who is the PRO of the Regional Coordinating Council. They had heard about it because people made complaints. That tells you that the thing was sustained for quite a while. And then he got an Admo, van or whatever to drive him to the place. So it took quite a while. Then while he got there, it was still ongoing. And they decided to assault him too. You can see he has bruises on his face, on his forehead. And he tells the story that he was rescued by a certain DSP who told them that they were beating the... Professor Enin, first of all, what could embolden officers to want to do such a thing because somebody's mobile phone is stolen? That's the story we know so far. Please unmute.
For those of us who were born before this technology, sometimes it's a problem. Now, if Rafik's point about recruits who had just passed out 4 days before is correct, and knowing Rafik, it must be so, then it raises a fundamental problem about the institutional culture and the nature of the training that immediately they formally been giving this attire. It gives them a sense of solidarity and a legitimacy to construe the powers conferred on them by the state to bear weapons on its behalf and protect both the state and its citizenry. That is the institutional culture that we need to interrogate and to ask whether during the training, and here I'm hoping that my two dear friends, the Minister of Defense, Mr. Nitiwu, Honorable Nitiwu, and then General Opompepra, that we can have a conversation next week as to whether we can include institutional cultures in the training, but even more importantly, issues of attitude and behavior. Because we can provide all the training that we can if the appropriate posture and understanding of their mission and the vision of the institution that they serve aren't understood properly. Then we will see this reversal to 30 years ago when civil-military relations were fraught with violence, with fear, and with a certain unwillingness by the citizenry to have any relationship to do with the military. We can't and we mustn't go there. For several reasons. Because in a democratic dispensation, civil democratic control must be such that the engagement between the civil side, so the democratic side, and the security side must have one aim: seeking to build institutions that speak to and respond to the needs and the changing dynamic of the communities that they serve. And these young men haven't understood the context within which they were recruited, trained, and passed out. That the operational context within which they work has changed dramatically. That in Burkina Faso, northeastern Nigeria, Niger, Mali, it is such behavior that creates, and also in EDRA anyway, that creates an enabling environment for yet another discourse that seeks to respond to this sense of exclusion, to this sense of dispossession, and to this sense of victimhood. We shouldn't allow the behavior of a few people to create this toxic mix that allows people to exploit it against that. It's not only about the military. Yesterday, I was traveling. Just after Apam, there's this rather well-built police officer. He was in white, who stopped my vehicle and said, "Oh, Chief, today is Friday, do something." And the intimidating posture and the threatening posture was that if you don't pay, I will deal with it. And once more, I'm appealing to the IGP and the regional police commander. Yesterday, 2:30, just after APAM, this big officer, and he's so big that I'm sure every MTT officer knows him. Please, that man's behavior represented the gangsterism that we are talking about in WA, and that was reflected in we cannot have people who represent the state, wear the state's uniform, and are armed on behalf of the state, threatening the citizenry, who by extension should be their partner. So let's take this opportunity to appeal to the Interior Minister also to identify this individual, because his behavior along the highways between Apam and Mankasim, extorting money in a gangster manner, is detrimental to the relationship that we want to build between uniformed forces and the civil populace.
Well, in the event you talk about, once you do not have a video about it, I can assure you that there will be a statement that will tell you that this is incorrect and that this is not the nature of the Ghana Army or the security forces, and that they use human rights protocols and all of that rubbish that they continue to churn at us by their PR department. Anything happens, they are told about it, and the first thing they do is to issue a statement and disbelieve everybody except themselves. So unless where there is ocular proof, everybody is a liar. In the last 15 months only in the country, as people have tried to chronicle what has happened, April 2020, a soldier murdered an innocent man at a Sherman market, and as they say, nothing has happened. In June 2020, they murdered an innocent man at Japong, and no one has been held accountable. If the people have been held accountable, they should be telling us. Or they want Media Foundation for West Africa to file RTI, request, and then they will say this is a security matter. It will not be disclosed, or they should pay money. Then in December, during the elections, we know what happened, and people are beginning to trace to that. About 6 or 5 people were killed in Techiman as a result of the elections, and like as we say, nothing appears to have happened, and the state itself, starting from the presidency, does not seem to have taken any good interest in this at all, with the exception of one brief statement that the president appears to have been compelled to make about this circumstance. Then in January 2021, soldiers invaded Parliament, and again, as we know, nothing has happened. In June, then we have 2 civilians that have been killed for demonstrating, and these soldiers went at them, shot them from the back. You can tell.
Yeah. Samson, I'm going to get you a video. This policeman is a gangster with known history. I'm just getting a lot of feedback right now, and people know him, and he has treated them in the same way. So we are talking about institutional culture, how to change these institutional cultures, because they are reflective of the colonial mentalities and structures that have not changed very much during the post-independence period. But the operational environment within which these services are performing is also changing. So these quick military and police assurances and reassurances, you see, do not help in creating that collaborative, understanding of what the problems are and the need to partner each other. As citizens, our experiences and our observations are key early warning indicators. They can contribute to the intelligence assessment, and it is when the security services and their political masters refuse to listen and to engage. That is why WA has happened. That is why Ejura happened. That is why Senya happened. And we've got to begin to ask ourselves, how do we create a conducive environment where we can engage, where we can dialogue? Because look, the citizens who are raising their voice, those who are complaining, are all driven by one aim. We want to partner and collaborate in a manner that will contribute to a functional, stable society that allows us to go about our business. A denial, and I think the police spokeswoman 2 weeks ago denied there was insecurity in this country. Now that is laughable. Others have said so. Let us not deceive ourselves. When people come to us and say, Samson, I am frightened. 2 years ago, I could walk my street and go and buy something at 8 p.m. Now I can't. We need to listen and show a duty of care by saying, look, what is it that makes you feel afraid? What is it that prevents you from walking around? The sheer nature of that engagement provides the information, the early warning signs, and then we can then assess the professional people that allows for specific types of intervention.
Yeah, talking about professional conduct, Prof. Enin, and sorry for cutting in. Talking about professional conduct, the Ejura situation. How do you explain that? As we understand, the military has protocols to follow for crowd and riot control, don't they? And the police. The police, not the military, really, because this is an internal matter. How the military got in, as if there was war there, nobody knows.
Yeah. Samson, that is correct. The police have specific protocols. They are trained. But historically, the Ghana Police Service has faced one consistent challenge through time, and that is the crowd control and crowd management. And they haven't learned very much how to get it done. And therefore, the last major crisis was the Accra Stadium, crisis. And if you read the Okujeto report, if you read the Boyce report from the early 70s, and several other reports, crowd control is always a problem. But it is not about the failure of the police in terms of how to control the crowd. It is the nature of the quality of the intelligence and the report that was sent up the chain of command. And here, I'm coming back once more to talk about the failure of that intelligence process and the quality of whatever report was sent and the decision-making process. Now, unlike WA, when Ejura started to bubble, there was silence. Now, an analysis of the discourses from the youth was one of plea. Please help us. We think we know those who are involved. When that didn't yield any result, it was, we will take the law into our own hands. That neither yielded any response until the burial and the subsequent incidences that resulted.
But before they did that, the police had announced the morning before they undertook, they did that, they went for the burial and did that 2 people had been arrested or so. So why couldn't they trust that the system was beginning to work and to give them the justice that they said they will not rest until it's been done?
Because the police had by that time lost the trust and the confidence of the society. When assessments are made, it is then up to the political leadership to step in to assuage people's heads. Okay, so the military will never ever on its own decide that, oh, we have heard there's something happening in Ejura, so we are going to intervene. No, they must always come by an invitation, and by the time that invitation comes, what it means is that the situation has degenerated so much so that we need a military response. Now, when you strike a blow against the state and we bring in the military hardly ever does conflict resolution or mediation. When it comes in, the situation ought to have degenerated to such an extent that it needs another type of force. And therein lies my problem with this assertion that there was a security assessment that said a station would be burnt, plus 2 people would be killed. I am now calling on my friend, Honorable Agaga, who sits on the Interior Committee, to ask to see this intelligence assessment and to see the conclusions of that assessment. Because, Samson, without having seen that document, I doubt very much if that assessment just moved from ground zero to that people were trying to burn down a police station. An actual analysis of that so-called document and the interview from which I'm picking this information from has so many gaps that even an ordinary sieve that you use to sieve pounded palm nuts to make your abenquine, that sieve has even better holes. Okay. So the second is that if that intelligence assessment had done a discursive analysis of what the people of Ejura were saying, then we wouldn't have gotten to the loss of life.
Talking about the people, the youth in Ejura, and perhaps their distrust for the police. Otherwise, if the police say we have arrested 2 people, we are working on it, and we are still chasing other people, why would they want to take to the street and to do the things they did? That's a question I ask. But there are people who are, for example, making references that, and I don't know from where you sit, what this situation is and whether anything can be done about it immediately before it gets worse. That these guys are closer to Manson Kwanta, if you like, and they are aware of the situation in 2018 when 21 police officers, rounded up a number of them, and then it ended up in the murder of the 7. And then we know that the committee that was set up, the 7-member committee that was set up, came out with the finding that the police simply framed the people up. They were not armed robbers. The police had claimed that they were armed robbers. And then they actually brought, guns and paraded in front of all of us to see that those were the instruments they were using. And later it turned out they were engaged in plain lies and that they had just rounded out the people for no reason. Now, with that at the back of their minds, they will not trust the police. We are being referred to recent situation of the bullion van murder, where the police suddenly have gone into the communities and they have arrested hundreds, as if without any planning or any targeting. Hundreds of people. Were they the ones who murdered 1 billion van, policeman on the bullion van? So they say you can't trust them.
The Ghana Police Service has a historical capacity to falsify information to such an extent that it is impossible for a professional to differentiate between the falsified document and the original document. I'm quoting from the Tibiru report from 1986. Commissioner Tibiru was tasked with looking at the nature and extent of falsifications and crime within the Ghana Police Service, particularly with respect to examinations, promotions, and demotion. So what we are talking about in 2018 and then the bullion ban issue has a long history, an almost institutional culture of falsification, of lies, and of presenting evidence that upon close examination can be torn apart. Now, when the bullion ban case happened, there are two issues here. First is the speed with which 225 people were arrested. I raised questions about A. So are all these people related to that one crime? If they were, then the quality of police intelligence is not only bogus, it is non-existent. Precisely because in undertaking such a mission, every extra person who gets to know about the operation raises the possibility of the leakage. Second, we also heard about a private individual whose CCTV cameras may have captured the incident. Why do you come out and say there's a private individual who is refusing to show the CCTV or hand over the CCTV? First, that private individual ought not to have been mentioned in the public discourse. Okay? A representative institution of the state has put an individual's life in danger because that representative institution did not have the skill set, and I'm always talking about strategic communication, to engage an individual, let this person understand his national duty to help the police to come to grips with such a problem. Okay, rather you expose that individual as being the problem, placing his life and that of his family in danger. So what we are seeing is that we have a service that is unable to communicate, that cannot undertake basic strategic assessments. Its operational assessments are not available and non-existent, and is so desperate to present results that in presenting those results exposes itself in terms of capacity.
I want to get to what exactly you think ought to be done and whether or not people will trust that anything will be done, because as we speak, the Manson Nkwanta issue that I referred to, where the 21 police officers, murdered these 7, boys and framed them up for being armed robbers, and the finding came out that they were clearly not armed robbers. This happened in 2018. Now, of course, there were some compensations that were given to them. Yesterday, in the usual fashion, we are told that those who died in Ejura, their families were handed some 20,000 cedis each. It looks like when these things happen, that becomes the end of it. Now, in 2019, the president gave us a promise that these police officers were being dealt with and that they were going to be prosecuted, that the prosecution process was ongoing. As I understand, the member of parliament for Asawasi, Muntaka Mubarak, who was very vocal on this issue, who actually pushed a lot for this issue to get the needed attention, has filed questions time and again in parliament. None has been answered yet. When the interior minister appeared in parliament during the vetting, he said they were using internal police processes to discipline them and it was ongoing. Can you imagine all this?
Oh, sorry. Something I can. I think this is where the Police Council can play a role. I think this is where the Police Council can play a role, and also the Parliamentary Committee on Defense and Interior. I'm asking for these institutional interventions to generate trust because the operational environment has changed. Our neighbors are under attack. They are being attacked left, right, and center. Communities are feeling insecure. And in quite a number of these countries, the challenges that they are facing now started this way. So let's try to be preventive in our actions and in our interventions so that we do not deteriorate the situation much further. We don't have have the space and the time, and the problems will continue to pile up. So this is an appeal. Let's begin to see our responses and our interventions as contributing to building first trust, which is necessary for those who provide security to us and those of us who are the recipients. But even more importantly, in contributing to building stronger cooperative and collaborative institutions that serves the needs of the larger population. It can be done, and it must be done.
How will the people come around? How will the people generally come around to believe that these are genuine efforts that will yield genuine results? And I'm asking that because of the circumstances that I referred you to. In this situation where the hundreds of poor people have been arrested, some of them will be taken to court, and some judges too will indulge the republic, and they will be kept, put on remand even without a charge. Without their charges being read out, anything, they will say we are investigating, and some judges will indulge them. They'll keep them because they are poor. They can't even afford a lawyer to defend them. But when it comes to police officers, 21 of them that a committee set up by the state has identified that they are murderers. They killed 7 people. You think giving the families 100,000 or 300,000 should end it? So people will not have trust. How do they come to trust the situation?
Something we must begin to build trust. We must begin to find ways of building trust. I mean, when we speak passionately and we are critical and we identify the problem, it's because it's a desperate appeal for change. It's a desperate appeal to pull back from the brink and to recreate that aura of confidence that allows us to support each other. The way you've reeled off these instances of institutional failure certainly will take some hard work and some doing to recreate that trust. But we can do it. I think we have done it before as a nation.
And in the Ejura situation, we have Mamitiwa Adodankwa, who has come out to speak on behalf of the IGP. And she's telling us of a different narrative, that it could be the case that Kaka, the activist, may not have been murdered because of the things he was doing, but something else. Now, this is someone that the police has put forward. What an image, what a brand. Someone who looked in the eyes of parents of the missing Takrady girls and said, we know where they are. Just keep calm. Everything will be fine. We are bringing them to you. Can you imagine what is going on in the minds of people as they watch and listen to all of these things going on? You say institutional failure. How long can that continue?
Well, Samson, apart from that failure, I've been appealing to the service also to be more savvy in its communication with the public. and to use language that generates trust, confidence, and opens the doors for dialogue and cooperation. We cannot and we must not continue to dismiss and overlook the hurt and the pain of ordinary people and the communities within which they are located. So my appeal once more is that let these institutions be cautious with their choice of words, the way it's presented, and the manner in which a duty of care becomes a natural aspect of the delivery of the services that the public expects.
Professor Enin, we are talking about Ejura again. You have these people who have gone in there in a situation where the clear protocol is that you don't fire, or you only fire to warn. You fire warning shot just to warn. And if people are running away, it tells you that they are afraid. They are retreating. Look at that officer who, went, knelt, took aim and shot in there. How can you look at that? And as we speak, we are just talking about committees. Nobody is being told that has been interdicted or, been put in a garden room. And I have represented, officers, both police and soldiers. I can tell you that when they do things internally that their leadership is not happy about, they act so swiftly, they discipline them so swiftly, they can remove them, they do all of these things. Why can't it be the same when it happens that they deal unfairly with civilians?
Samson, those civilians that we are talking about, you and I, and the people of Ejura and Wa, have representations in Parliament. And there are appropriate committees that are meant to respond to these challenges. So let's ask them to be up and doing. When Parliament, with the powers of the Constitution, demonstrates both an ability and an aptitude to deliver, then these problems that we are seeing will be reduced. So let's bring Parliament in and let's get the democratic control powers that they have to play their oversight roles to ensure that together we can see an improvement. Something we don't have much of a choice, apart from continuing to point out whatever weaknesses there are, continuing to encourage and also provide the information and the knowledge necessary so that those who need to act on our behalf can do so. Lawlessness is not an option. Flouting the law is not an option. But criticisms and suggestions predicated on knowledge that seeks to bring about change is a useful, and I would argue, a welcome approach.
Okay,
to bringing about
perhaps this very small one, we are concluding, but this very small one, it bothers me a bit. When they say these are new recruits, please, have you looked at the video carefully? I can see as if there are some elderly people within it, and I don't see the army recruiting elderly people as fresh recruits.
Well, I didn't know anything about recruits until this morning, happened from Rafik's report. But Samson, whether new recruits, young people, old people, it's still about attitudes, it's still about behavior, it's still about how to transform the classroom knowledge and the field exercises into real-time operational deliverables. When you finally meet the people that you are serving. But once more, I would want to talk about institutional culture. And here, certainly, probably from here, if the minister is free, I want to give him a little call, plus General Opompepra, about these three things: institutional culture, attitude, and behavior. How do we bring these together in our training so that in translating them from the classroom and the simulation and field exercise, in real time, they remember and are able to provide a service that we can say, wow, this is the military and the police that we are proud of when they serve in international peacekeeping. We want to have that same pride when they perform also in Ghana. Samson, I am an optimistic person. We can get it done. Let's get to work and let's see the change that we are all looking for.
Professor Enin, I want to be like you. You have been this optimistic for a very long time. You have been very consistent about these ills within the system for a very long time. And you are still so optimistic. Let's hope and pray that the right things get done. Thank you very much, Professor Kwesi Enin, with the Kofi Annan Peacekeeping Training, International Peacekeeping Training Center. Now we will be ending with the voice of the Defense Minister on the war situation, the Chief of Army Staff, Major General Opompepra. He also was there and spoke. And then we have the minority leader and the majority leader as well. They spoke about it. Let's see what their thinking is about the way forward on this also. They had some demands for what should be done for the Asawase situation. I said Asawase Ejura situation. I've got a couple of your messages. Let me share some of them with you quickly. And this one from Kweku Enchibuesiako. He says, I have a few words to sum up how I feel about Ghana. Leadership is weak and poor. I'm terribly worried for Ghana. If you know Kweku Enchibuesiako very well, he always is more optimistic than you have heard him now. Right. This one says Frank Anderson Jr. sending from the UK says, we have this level of knowledge and expertise in Professor Enin, and we are allowing it to go waste. We might find ways to tap into local skills and expertise. That for him is very important. Okay, some other messages. Some people in WA want to speak to us directly. Thank you. This issue has been discussed over the week. This one says, and this is from someone within the military really, that the military as well as the police have manuals for crowd control. Okay, I thought it was just for the police, for crowd control and riot control. The problem in the Ejura situation is that there was no command and control of the personnel who went there. Okay, this is insider speak. There was no command and control of the personnel who went there. A soldier must only shoot for warning if ordered to do so. Only shoot for warning if ordered to do so. So who ordered this soldier to speak, to shoot, these soldiers to shoot and shoot the way they did? How come the soldiers fired to kill and not to maim? Who gave the order to shoot to kill? The military must answer these. All right, the military must answer these, and the committee set up, the Justice Kumsin and Vladimir Chidanso committee will have to look into that. It is never true, the claim that the soldiers in WA are recruits. You can see from the video that there were elderly soldiers among them. If the military command can repatriate and subsequently dismiss personnel for refusing to take COVID-19 vaccines, then they must not waste time in dismissing those involved in these unprofessional conduct. Okay, so he's disclosing a bit, but just for my private use. Clearly, we can't disclose beyond that. on the show. Thank you very much. We will take a quick break. When I return, some of you have sent in some messages. I'll read them, and then we'll get to what you are so eager to have. That is the conversation on landlord and tenants. We'll be right back.
I quickly called both the regional minister who was in Accra but on the way to Wa, and also the commanding officer of the unit to find out exactly what the issues were and whether they had officially asked the military to go to town, which they said no. Mr. Speaker, I also got in touch with a member of parliament for Wa Central, Dr. Rashid Pelpo, who was very helpful in trying for both of us to find a resolution immediately to quell the situation. And so I can report, Mr. Speaker, that yes, it's true. That incident happened. The military immediately issued a statement condemning what has happened and promising to discipline the officers who did that. They have also sent the chief Wana Palace to, first of all, apologize to the people for what happened. The military's, my brief on the military is that they've had very good standing relationship with the people of Wa in particular. And the people have been very, very helpful in their fight against terrorism and all the things that have gone. So this incident to them is really unfortunate. It shouldn't have happened because, one, it was not sanctioned by the regional minister. It wasn't sanctioned by the commanding officers. Neither was it sanctioned by anybody in Accra.
We have, as you said, been living in harmony. It's rather unfortunate that soldiers who went for training and just passed out and reported only about 4 days ago, Your Excellency, on behalf of the Military High Command, please accept our sincere apology. We are going to fish out all those who were involved in this and exact the maximum punishment according to our Code of Service Discipline, because we will not allow a few to destroy this golden relationship that exists between the good people of this area and the military.
You see daily soldiers in uniform, police. We know their duty as defined by this constitution. Maintenance of law and order is the preserve and mandate of the police. Territorial integrity for the Ghana Armed Forces. Where necessary, they can keep the peace, but they have no moral duty to undermine the peace and to abuse the rights and freedoms of innocent Ghanaians. This cannot continue, Mr. Speaker. So I'm urging you to request your committee on defense and interior, Mr. Speaker, to act expeditiously if it means visiting Wa, to apprise themselves of the development and the circumstances leading to. The impunity must stop.
We must admit to ourselves that there's creeping lawlessness, I wouldn't say led by the military, but led by us civilians, by citizens of this country. Mr. Speaker, and we must own up to that. That increasingly we are seeing symptoms of discipline in society breaking down. And that cannot be happy news for anybody.
You're welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first, as always. Now, some of your messages on the back of the what happened in Wa and also in Ejura. Dr. Charles Reku Brobe says that the infection of our hitherto professional security agencies with party foot soldiers and apparatchiks imbued with a sense of entitlement is the major cause of breakdown in discipline and breakout of hooliganism in our armed forces and police. Then Azindo says the army is a revered institution of discipline. to ensure the happenings in Wa is never repeated, the military high command must identify and punish the individuals involved in the act so it serves as a lesson to others. Nyavo John says Ejura killings was a predetermined act. They were sending a clear signal to intimidate and put fear in the Fix the Country demonstrators in Accra. Papa J. Jr. says, we have a human rights lawyer as president, and this is the state our innocent country has been put to. Brutality here and there, and His Excellency is not acting. Well, he's giving some orders. Let's see what results we get. Kofi Amwa, and you see I edited your commentary because we can say what we want to say without sounding insulting, especially to the elderly. Kofi Amwa, it is the same security service that was quick and apt in identifying coup plotters. That is slow and inept in protecting the citizens. In whose interests do they act? The governor or the governed? Then this one, you don't give your name, you say justice for Kaka. The IGP and other ministers responsible for our security have all come out time and again to justify their call for use of brutes or excessive force in the manner we have seen of all the issues we are dealing with. So setting up a 3-man committee is a waste of time. All right, so those were your views. Then Yakubu Ibn Chambers says that the good one amongst the security services in Ghana are few and the bad ones are all over. I thought it's the other way around. Even if those soldiers who perpetrated the dastardly acts in Wa and Ejura are recruits, they could have applied demands of reasonableness as humans themselves. The recruitment process has to be checked because the reputation of Ghana security is on the line. Yes, okay. Musa Abattoir says, I find it very useful to share my opinion regarding the subject. What is happening regarding security atrocities is what I call leadership crisis. It all boils down to leadership. If the leadership fails to act appropriately, the unethical behavior and lawlessness exhibited by the military will continue. All right, so let's end it here and then go to bread and butter matters. Of course, okay, I can read this from Kojo Ahodo. Kojo Ahodo says, this has nothing to do about who gave instructions or who asked for the military to get involved. This is a normal practice. What should be done is to have those who misconducted themselves disciplined. Kojo Ahodo sent that from the UK. He says the military is a very disciplined body and we know them for who they are. YK Ansa Yeboah, that will be my final comment I'll read. Says he's disappointed in, uncomfortable and disappointed in Kofi, Professor Kwesi Enin, the narrative that he continues to rehash and having hope and so on. He says, he has said that since 2014, at least, Ghana is virtually, he says, a failed state due to perpetual institutional failures and dysfunctional systems in place. The only reason why it is not obvious is that people are not on the street fighting. All right? All right. Thanks, all of you, for your messages. Now, let's begin to talk about where to sleep. Where to sleep, where to get premises to do business, and how that is affecting very many people. We have a housing deficit of as much as 2 million or more, but that's just the official figure. There are some who believe that the figure should be far more than that. I have guests in the studio who can help us, and also via Zoom who can help us to better appreciate the situation and to give us solutions. And we're going to deal directly with you. Let's have your questions. We have a number of them coming already. I'll put it to them for them to answer. Now, joining us via Zoom is Chum Ampofo. Right here, Chum Ampofo. He is Chief Rent Officer, Rent Control Department. And then Emmanuel Hovek-Posu, who is Head, Public Relations, Rent Control Department. By Zoom is Kojo Baini, Director, Vine CBH Group, an immediate past Executive Council member of Greta. Gentlemen, thank you very much for making the time to join us on Newsfile.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Right. Mr. Kojo Baini, can you try so we know we have you clear?
Yeah, Samson, I can hear you.
Great to have you. Okay, so when we are told that we have a housing deficit of 2 million and so on and so forth, how are we supposed to process that? And so what? We have heard this over and again. And so what?
Okay. Good morning to the panelists and to our fellow Ghanaians. The figures for housing deficit have been updated regularly. Previously, it was 1.7 million, and now our minister has come out with a new figure of over 2 million.
Yeah.
If I'm to be. Now, these figures are based on what the UN Habitat sees as the people who actually need housing. And so they take the statistics that we have from here and look at that. But for us, what we should be looking at is the effective demand for the housing that is available. The figure of 2 million, if we say we are going to meet it today and we build 2 million homes, majority of them are actually going to be empty. Okay, and so it's not just a question of taking the headline figure and then putting pressure to say this is the goal and this is where we need to get to. There is a bit more to it than that. But I'm sure as we go on, we'll get into the detail of it.
Is that why we are told that
housing deficit of
is that why we are told that out of this excess, estimated in excess of 2 million housing units that we need, you have an estimated 60% of Ghanaians who will need some form of assistance to be able to access housing?
Yes, that's part of the issue. Okay, now the 60% you talk about are people who cannot afford to pay for housing and would need some support. And so if you look at the 2 million deficit, then and you take 60% out of it, there's only 40% of it that really, if they are built, will be occupied or will be sold or may even be rented because some of these people cannot even afford the rent. And so social housing needs to be part of the equation when it comes to thinking of solutions.
Interesting. And I realize from your end, perhaps, I don't know who to start with. Let me start with your boss. Okay. I realize from your end that your 2019 statistics show that in excess of 70-something, 2% of the people who come to you with problems, it's about payment of rent. So it ties in what he says.
Okay. Good morning, fellow Ghanaians. It's exactly so, because looking at the vulnerable people in the country, and as my brother earlier said, that we can even provide a 2 million housing, but how many people will be able to maybe either purchase or to rent? It all depends, maybe the work that people find themselves in. More so, getting the 2 million for the people, are we saying that is it within the urban areas alone or within the other regions? When you look at renting aspect, it normally based on capitals and cities. So if we are saying 2 million deficit, are we saying that we are building the whole 2 million across the regions and the districts or capitals? And the question is, having put up such kind of housing, the work that people must do for them to pay their rent is also a difficult thing to do. So I think he's right.
So, like everybody acknowledges so far, even if you put up the housing, it will be expensive, people cannot afford. Then the suggestion is that we should have social housing inclusive of that. So that clearly explains why you have as many as 72% who come to you knocking on your door and the issue is about rent.
Yes.
Even if they can't afford the affordable housing, they should be able to pay rent and have a decent living. In a situation where it is free for all, everybody determines how much they are charging and getting quite depressing. How do such people survive? With you placed there by law to ensure that there is some sort of, equity in the way rent goes on in the country.
Okay. Yes, so something. Again, good morning. And then we appreciate the opportunity to speak with the populace on this serious issue in the country. Something, the implementation of the law or any law is a collective responsibility. Since it's a collective responsibility, there are laid down rules and regulations if you want to venture into this commercial aspect of this housing issue. What we always say is that if you build your premises and you want to dwell in personally or want to give it to your daughter, your family member, no act is infringed on you. But when it comes to mind that, no, I want to collect money out of this building I've built, there are rules and regulations, and that comes the Rent Act 1963, Act 220. We can go as far back 1942, where we started this controlling of rent. And there has been several legislative instruments and the purpose for which they were established. If you just give me some few minutes, I'll just go through some of them. Some are very interesting. In 1942, we had what we call Defense Rent Restriction Regulation. And the purpose is to restrict anybody from increasing rent above those of 3rd September 1939, except where an assessment has been made by the Rent Assistance Committee. That was then the name of the department. And then also to restrict eviction by anybody except by court. We look at 1943, which talks about Defense Restriction Amendment Regulation. Then 1947, Rent Control Ordinance. 1949, Rent Control Ordinance Amendment Ordinance. Then 1952, we had what we call Rent Control Ordinance. Then 1960, we had Rent Control Amendment Act 1960. Then we came to 1963, Act 220. Then in 1973, we had Rent Amendment Decree. Then again, in 1982, we had PNDC Law 5. 1986, Rent Control Law. And what was interesting was that in 1956, the 1960, the purpose was to amend the standard rent for those changed in 1st July 1960. We had the PNDC law. The purpose is to ensure no rent could be increased until 1983, 6 months. Also to ensure landlord pay 50% tax on their rent. That's the PNDC law 5 in 1982. Again, the purpose to ensure any landlord who demand higher than allowed rent or fail to pay the 50% tax fulfilled its promises to the state. This is where the interest is, so that you are not supposed to charge more than 50%. If you do that, you forfeit your...
You lose your property.
You lose your property. So
now that's no more the law.
That's no more the law. But I'm just bringing this out, that the control of rent has been there since 1942. And there has been stiffer punishment for those, or stiffer rules that if you don't abide by the rules, as far as you forfeit your premises. So the public should calm down, because we know there are advantages and disadvantages of controlling rent. But in the nutshell, we look at both sides and come to equilibrium, come to so that we will make housing affordable to the tenants or to anybody who wants to rent, to prevent displacement.
Okay.
So that if you have small money, you can get somebody someplace to rent.
That's where we are getting to, sir. And he takes us through a history, very beautiful.
Yes.
Have we failed because you say control, and yet there's no control? Everybody is doing what they like, and people are in pain, people are in suffering, they are in hardship because of rent.
Yes, it is true that people are in peace. The reason is that, you see, I can start from initially the population was not as much as today. And moreover, urban migration and the foreigners are also moving to the country. Automatically, rent or housing will be very scarce. And now, if the demand is more than the supply, at the end of the day, landlord will take advantage on that. Again, the influence of the agents who have been, who is not authorized agents, have come in. And before we can even get the public to know that rent is controlled, we need to wipe off the unauthorized agents. Because at times, some of the landlords are not even willing to take advance and to increase rent also. But because agents rely on their charges based on commissions and other this thing, the more they take the advance, the more their commission
goes up.
So when it happens like that, it even led the landlords even to abuse the Section 25(5), which says that no landlord have to take rent advance more than 6 months. So if we are able to get rid of them or regulated the agents.
So here you are repeating this. No landlord is allowed by law to take rent for more than
6 months.
Rent advance for more than 6 months.
Yes.
But we know that that is rather the default position.
Yes.
that landlords are taking 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years even. So what is happening, Emmanuel?
Okay. So something, what is happening is, or what has happened, is that we realized that education at both the landlords and the tenants part were not there. So for the past 2-3 years, we've done a lot of massive sensitization program, of which we are seeing results now. Now, most landlords are now taking monthly. Some landlords are now taking...
Did you say most landlords?
Sorry.
Some.
Some are also taking 6 months.
those who have understood and want to abide by the law. But most landlords, that's where the most come in, are still in their 2 years, 3 years rent advance taking.
You mean they are still breaking the law?
They are still breaking the law.
They are committing the crime.
The crime. And what we've started with my position, okay, what we started doing in my jurisdiction is that I've lined up some landlords before the magistrate. I'm waiting for the verdict so that it can be published for landlords to know that there are sections in the Act that forbids them from taking more than 6 months rent advance if it's a long tenancy. Okay, if it's a short tenancy, the law allows you to take it monthly. If it's a long tenancy, what is it? It means that you can sign an agreement with somebody for 5 years, 2 years, and above. But when it comes to the payment, it should be in blocks of 6 months, until the tenancy ends. So we are waiting for the verdict. I'm pushing the magistrate as a way of sensitizing the people to give me the verdict or the adjudication so that we can publish that.
First of all, and I'll get to the estate development people to get their view on this. First of all, your law, our law, says you can't even advertise your premises for rent unless you, rent control, have come in to do some work and giving some certificate.
Yes.
Tell me how many people are obeying this.
Okay. Yes. So it's a fact. Just as I mentioned, the education is not there. Majority of people go into this venture without learning what pertains in that environment. People just wake up, they build, and then they put for rent on it without going through the legal process.
What's the legal process?
The legal process, the first instance, when you build just as I mentioned, when you build your premises and you want to dwell in or you want to give it to your family member, no law or no act infringe on you. But when it comes to mind that, no, I want to collect money from the building I've built.
Commercial.
If you look from Section 10 to Section 19 of the Rent Act, and specifically Section 10, it said application for an assessment of recoverable rent by an appropriate rent officer, which means the first point, of course, to come to the Rent Control Department, apply for this assessment of recoverable rent. The recoverable rent is the rent you want to charge for the premises. We will come in as a rent control officer or the rent magistrate to assess the place, look at how nice you've built your place, the materials you use, the fittings, and the features. And then we'll come out with an assessment certificate. That assessment certificate will detail how much you are to charge as rent for a period of 2 years. So after the 2 years, you come in and then apply for what we call reassessment. There are some ingredients that we take into consideration when doing the assessment. The first is the property rate you pay, the value of the land on which you've sited your premises. Any rate you pay, we all factor all this into it. Then when we come out with the assessment certificate, we issue into it how much you have to charge for a period of 2 years. When you get the assessment certificate, the first thing now you have the authority to do is to advertise for your premises. So until you get the assessment certificate, you don't have the right to advertise your premises. You have 2 ways, 2 means of advertising. The first one is the agents that we've mentioned now, of which they are to take only 5% of the rent advance that has been paid to the landlord as a commission. But they are flouting it. We've discussed it, and then very soon we'll deal with them. The second aspect is...
What you mean is that there's a new law coming that will take care of
We'll take care of that. Okay. The second avenue is the vacant premise register we have at our offices, which majority of Ghanaians are not aware, that you can register your vacant premises with the Rent Control Department so that the prospective tenants, those roaming about looking for an apartment, can also come in, and when they come and see that the apartment located at this point suits me, we call the landlord, we call you as the prospective tenant, we bring you together to go and document your processes. So after you've gotten somebody, the first thing you have to do after that is to issue the person with what we call a tenancy agreement.
before even the person pays you the money. That tenancy agreement will spell out the rights and responsibilities of that tenant. You, as a landlord, you have rights and responsibilities. What is the rate or the rent that I have to pay for that period? And the frequency of payment. You need witnesses. Okay? If you are a landlord, you are not aware, you don't have knowledge about this, you have lawyers to consult so that they can help you draft the tenancy agreement. Better still, at the rent control department, we have samples of this tenancy agreement where you come in, we'll explain to you so that you go and amend it so that it will suit you. But in writing the tenancy agreement, you should take into consideration the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You have to take into consideration Article 12.2 of our Constitution, which spells out the fundamental human rights. Okay? There are sections in the Rent Act that you have to consider in coming out with your tenancy agreement. You cannot come out with any fictitious tenancy agreement and want somebody to abide by it. Just recently, some landlord close to Winneba School, I want to mention, he has come out with regulations. And in there, he said you cannot have a visitor. This is absolutely fictitious. You are infringing on somebody's human right. You brought it that the person has received a visitor, so you are evicting the person. I have to strike the case off. Because you first of all, you didn't register the tenancy agreement with us. For us to go through and make sure we remove all those inadequacy in there.
Let me recap briefly and then go and find out one very critical situation for me. What I mean by that is, I don't think you can control something that you don't manage.
Exactly.
So let's ask those who do this business, whether or not the difficulties you face, irrespective of the law and how it empowers what has to be done, is because once you don't manage the property, you can't control it. But you're saying that to start with, if I put up a building and I want to give it out for rent, either for residential purpose or for commercial purpose, then first I must come to rent control. When I come to rent control, you do what is known as an assessment, evaluation. It's professionally done. Once it is done, I'll be issued a certificate. It is that certificate that allows me to now advertise. Then, when somebody comes in to take the property, they must have a tenancy agreement. And that tenancy agreement must be registered with you. Until that is done, they don't have a right to start collecting money. And in the collection of the money to which is the rent, they cannot charge for more than 6 months. Even if it is a 5-year rent agreement. Okay. We will come for you to tell us what the sanctions are and give us examples of who you have made to suffer for not following this particular law. Now, if you are just joining us, we are seeking to empower you, both landlords and tenants, so that once everyone knows their rights, then it might help. We are going to give you the opportunity to participate in this discussion by asking your questions and what situation you may be facing with your rent situation, and they will give you the direct answers what can be done. Let me ask Kujobaini the question I had already suggested. How do you control something you don't manage? Is that not what the difficulty they face? Yes, Mr. Baini. Yes, Mr. Baini, my question is to you. Please unmute.
Yes, Samson, the rent control officers. Yes, the rent control officers actually, I just did. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. The rent control officers, they have they have the act which they have to go by. And so I would rather go up enforceable. And if it is backed by funding, to enforce it. The rent control assessment officers, nationwide, how many do they have? And how many properties are let in a month? Okay, you can see the inadequacies are major. And so it is, very difficult to do. However, if we've gone up to the lawmakers, then we have to look at the situation in the light of, for instance, the socialist government compared to a capitalist government. They all have what they would have promised their people. Okay, the socialist government is supposed to come and say, okay, like as it has been since 1942, we are socialists, or in the PNDC laws and so on. Things are all socialist in those areas. And so you can see that there is a stifling of investment into housing stock. All feed into the deficit. So all these things are fed into the problem we sit with today. And this thing needs to be taken in holistically. Because if today we have a socialist leaning government, they are going to change rents, what you can collect, what you cannot collect, and say it's man's money, okay? Or some people, everything other government comes in, and they say they're capital. Demand and supply will end up somewhere, and we'll have, a perfect market, hopefully. And then you start getting into problems there as well, because those who are, socially challenged will fall out of that net. And so we have to meet at a point somewhere in the middle. And that is where the laws keep changing and favoring one side against the other. So really, there is always going to be political influence.
The line is rather bad.
We need to look at it holistically and see where there is.
Mr. Ampofo's line is rather bad. I think we need to sort it out and get back to it. What's from the basic points? So we're getting people to appreciate both landlords and tenants, so that in the hope that you will also do your job well, and we live in a country of laws, so the laws will be followed, then everybody will be happy.
Yes.
What are the difficulties that you encounter in seeking to make this beautiful law work? That you build your property, you must come to us first, we must do an assessment and give you an assessment certificate. Could it be that your assessment sometimes is arbitrary? You are giving them rates that the landlord feels, I've spent so much to build this thing, and you want me to charge just how much? Is that not one of the problems?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Assessment have its own factors put together before we can come out with rent.
What are the factors?
The factors is what my brother even said. In the first place, the location of the place. See, the bank overdraft that landlords pay. Then the facilities therein, in that very premises. And also the likewise premises. Likewise premises, for instance, this Kotobabi, you are paying 5 cedis here. Across the road, another house, the same thing, 5 cedis. So you cannot say that upon all the facilities therein and the same facilities here, you cannot say you are taking 5 cedis and here 10 cedis. It all depends on the sizes. It could only change if the size is different. But if the sizes are the same and the facilities are the same, then it means that rents will. So at the end of the day, when we take all these measures, we put it into scale, then we give out the rent payable per month. So one cannot say that. In fact,
don't you have a situation where landlords are disagreeing with you about what you are trying to sort of, insist should be the charge?
Yes.
And what do you do in such circumstances?
Yeah, it do happen. But when it happens like that, the landlords also have the right to appeal against the decision or your decision. And when decision is being appealed, it goes to court. And it's the court to determine. Because our department is a squashy department, and the final decision rests at the bosom of the judge or the rent magistrate. So at the end of the day, when you get to the rent magistrate or the judge, you will be the final person to determine.
So if there is disagreement as to what the rate should be, then either the person you have assessed the rate for will use that, or they have to go to court.
Yes.
And for the court to decide otherwise.
Exactly so.
How much is this a problem?
No, it shouldn't be a problem. You know, the fear is that a lot of Ghanaian things, if they build the apartment for a long time, will be using 1963 iron rod price or cement price to determine the rate. We use current economic rates to do the assessment. The underlying factor has been education. People are not totally aware of this provision in the Act. They can take advantage because at the end of the day, it may even be like what you are charging is even low.
Yes.
Okay? So landlords should avail themselves. It's not anything much to apply for any assessment. It's just like applying for a salmon or just coming for a salmon. Yes, we come and do the assessment. We give you the certificate. Then you can stand on to operate your business. Yes.
So I've got some questions that are coming up, and I will get to them. But briefly, as I understand in the law also, a landlord cannot increase the rent without reference to you.
Yes.
Is that it?
Yes.
Yes.
Listen, when you look at Section 19, it talks about landlord prohibited from collecting rent increase resulting from increase in rate without notice. Okay, so no landlord of any premises shall collect from the tenant of such premises any increase in rent attributable to increase in rate in respect of such premises unless he has notified the tenant previously in writing in a prescribed form the amount of the old rent, the amount of the new rent, and where a part or any premises has been let, the amount of the rate attributable to such part, the amount of increase in rent, and the date from which the new rate takes effect. And then subsection 2, when any part of any premises has been let and there has been an increase in rate in respect of the old or such premises, no landlord shall A, fix the amount of the rate attributable to such part, or B, collect the increase in rent in respect of such part unless the amount and increase has been approved, again, has been approved by the rent officer. So this is clear. And then subsection 3, no landlord of or other person interested in any premises shall collect the increase in rate attributable to such an increase in respect of any premises, such increase rate were assessed. Okay, so until the place has been assessed, you don't have the right to increase it. And even if it's increased,
if I have
you have
done
to
some redevelopments, refurbish the place nicely, as they say, pimped it up.
Okay,
why won't I charge extra?
Yeah, so anytime you make an improvement, you come for reassessment. The reassessment is open within the 2 years. You can't wait. Of course, it's an option for you. When you do an improvement, you want to wait till the end of the 2 years before you come for reassessment. It's an option. But within the period, if you turn your painting room into a tile room,
and you want to come for reassessment, the reassessment is open within the period. So you come for the reassessment.
If you don't have approval from rent control, you can't charge increase.
That is Section 19 of the Rent Act, 1963, Act 220.
And you know,
you know why I have paused?
Yes. It should come with improvement. You cannot depend on your old rents, your old building, and ask of increment, whereby nothing has been done on it. So we are.
Yes, in fact, for some people, nothing has been done, but they will come and say cement prices have gone up.
Yes.
As if they are now coming to build. They have already built.
Exactly. So,
and they ask you to pay.
Exactly. So that is why you need to come in for us. In fact, it's not only the landlord to report. The tenants also have the right to report at the rent control, saying that my landlord wants to increase my rent. And he can also file an assessment. We invite the landlord and we all go to the kind of question you are asked. We'll go in for inspection and we'll determine whether it's even supposed to increase rent or not. And our recommendation and our destiny will work.
Mr. Barney had asked the question, how many officers do you even have in the country? Do you have the capacity to police this law and make sure it works?
No.
Okay. You don't?
Okay.
He says no.
Not no. We have them for now. At first, people thought we don't have that kind of staff to assist. But for now, we have them. The only problem is that, as we said previously, the education was very low. And now that we have taken the mantle to educate the public to know their rights. So that's what I'm saying, that it is not the only landlord, it's both parties. If one is dissatisfied with whatever the landlord is doing or a party is doing, he has every right to report and will respond to it quickly.
Right. Mr. Barney, this will dovetail into the affordable housing situation because the lack of the housing itself, it's the bigger issue. And then the few houses we have, the rent to, we are making it almost impossible for especially, like you have noted, younger people, the poor, young graduates just come out of school, just got a job, doesn't have rent allowance or something, and they are being asked to pay 2 years advance, and they can't afford it because it's just too much. But you are making a point. Let me have you continue that.
Yes, I'm afraid I missed a bit that part of the conversation. However, the general point is that a lot of the controls come from above, from the laws that are enacted. And where the Rent Control Act itself comes in, you know, it stipulates, it creates an environment which I believe is quite rigid. For instance, saying that pay 6 months in advance, or, you know, you can't charge anything. You can't, even if it's a 5-year rental, pay 6 months in advance. It puts pressure on both the renter and the investor who has put money in there and expect a return. Now, our rent control officer, I think it was Mr. Chumampofu, who said that you know, people are forced to pay 2 years in advance and so on. But in today's day and age, most people are paying rent monthly. Okay? And if you want a place for 6 months, you pay every month, your rent is paid. If you are not...
Did you say most people?
No, may I correct myself? A lot of people. A lot of people. A fairly decent number of people do that. So if I'm collecting my rent monthly, the rent law does not really help me because the process it will take, okay, to evict someone who doesn't pay for the third month, okay, it does not line up with the law. And so you are caught in between.
That's true.
You know, the law stipulates that when you pay your rent, you cannot evict someone for the first 2 years.
That's
and that is regardless of the length of time of the rental. And so, if your lender, who has helped you build the house, is demanding their money monthly, there's a disconnect. Okay, so the issues are all over the place, but they all emanate from the rigidity of the laws we actually enact.
All right, so Mr. Bani just made a statement. It's a statement of law, but is it without a caveat that once the landlord brings in the tenant, you cannot evict the tenant until the period has expired, 2 years?
No. What we have under Section 17 is what we call recovery of possession. The first section there is that no tenant has the right to owe any landlord a month's rent. So if you, as a tenant...
So starting with, it's a statement of law, but there are exceptions.
Okay.
You can do things that will get your landlord, empower your landlord to remove you.
To apply for order of eviction.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first point is that where any rent lawfully due from the tenant has not been paid or tendered within 1 month after the date on which it becomes lawfully due. So if you as a tenant, you've signed a tenancy agreement for 2 years, and you have been allowed to pay monthly, and you owe that landlord a month's rent, the landlord can just stand on it, apply to the rent control department for order of eviction. So even if the tenant defaults in paying, you, the landlord, has no right to forcefully eject that tenant from your premises.
If the tenant will not move peacefully, you cannot forcefully remove them.
Exactly.
You must go to
the
get
rent
an
control
order.
department or the magistrate and apply for the order of eviction. For us to do investigate why the tenant is not paying.
So
then
do you understand? So do you understand, Mr. Bani?
Yes.
He says this one month rent payment, and when you have to evict somebody, it doesn't gel. You owe me 1 month's rent, and I have to go to rent control. I have to go to the magistrate to get you removed. I may spend more than you will be paying me.
Rent.
No, under Section 31, there's no free rent. So even the period of adjudication, you are mandated to pay.
Okay.
There's no free rent. It says no landlord should be prevented from any section of this act from collecting its rate or rent. So just as I said, during the adjudication period, the tenant is supposed to pay the rent so far as he's occupying the premises. So the law is that you have to apply for the order of eviction. We are fast-tracking our processes. We are welcoming this digitalization process, which will improve our processes. So when this comes, though it's not yet in, manually we are fast-tracking our processes. So it will not take you so long if an offense has been committed under the Act for us to evict or order any tenant from your premises. So Mr. Bani should not...
you will agree with Mr. Bani, what he talks about and what you just explained. What the law confers on the tenant, what is known as, you become what is known as a statutory tenant. Because your time is due to pay rent. You have not been able to pay the rent. And yet, you cannot be moved out of the place. But you are expected to pay as and when.
Okay.
Do you get it? Say you have a 2-year rent.
Okay.
The 2 years have come. You don't have money to pay extra. Then you have to stay in and then pay on the old tenant, the old tenancy. If you are not moving peacefully, the landlord then has to go through you or to the court to get the person to move out because of the principle of irremovability status that the person will enjoy as a statutory tenant. Is that fair to the landlord? You have rented my premises, your time is up, but the law says if you will move peacefully, I can't move you forcefully. You must stay there and still pay me the old rent.
and until I take you to court before you have been ejected.
Is that fair?
It's not fair, but you see, that is what the law have been stated. And we cannot go contrary to the law. So if we are to go by the law, then we make sure that we follow the suit or we follow the bills. So we are advising landlords that don't wait until tenants default so much payment before you come. The law have given or stated clear that within 1 month, if one fails to pay his rent, you can report. So don't expect the tenant to go 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. By the time of 3 months, and if you are able to file the case, I think you could have even get, or you have to get your premises before the 3 months or the date of statutory this.
Interesting. So as I informed you, in due course, we will open the lines for you to share your problems directly, landlords and tenants, and get direct answers to them. But this is intended to educate and empower you so that both landlord and tenants can deal in a situation that makes all of us happy. This, you can't charge advance for 2 years. What happens if I do it? Because people are doing it anyway.
Okay.
What happens?
Let me.
Yes.
In fact, the law has stated clear under section 25(5) that no landlord have the right to take 2 years or rent advance more than 3 months or 6 months. So once it's stated, people are saying that I've gone for loan and put up the premises, and you are telling me to take 6 months. Don't forget that the house has come to stay. And we don't take only 1 month or 2 years to maybe recoup your investment. It is there. So if we are to build a country, we need to make sure the law works, and both landlord tenants will have their peace. Because we are all within the country, and when we talk of citizens, we are the citizens, and the law is made for the citizens.
Okay, so something in addition to that, just under the section, for use of the penalty, under section 25(5), it says any person who has a condition of grant, renewal or continuance of a tenancy demand in the case of monthly or short tenancy, the payment in advance or more than a month's rent, or in the case of a tenancy exceeding 6 months, the payment in advance of more than 6 months' rent, shall be guilty of an offense and upon conviction be liable to a fine not exceeding 500 penalty units, which is equivalent to 6,000, or a term of imprisonment not exceeding 2 years.
Or both.
Okay, or both. So when you flout this law, this is the penalty. You pay 500 penalty unit, or in imprisonment not exceeding 2 years, or both. So this is the caution we are sending, that landlords should take note of this. The law says don't demand and don't receive.
So
if
you could be paying 6,000 Ghana cedis, or you go to jail for up to 2 years.
Yes, a maximum.
Or you could get both.
Exactly.
For charging rental advance of more than 6 months.
Yes.
Then too many people have to be many people have to be in jail. Or they should be paying this fine so that the state will be raised.
Get some money. Or the department can even be resourced. Okay.
Yeah. So
but the implementation.
Talking about resourcing the department, the point where they are supposed to come for assessment and get a certificate, renewal, they have to come to you.
These are all internal generated funds we can do.
But
somebody came to my office. He was complaining about how deteriorated our Tema office is. I asked him, as a landlord, have you paid rent tax before? He said, no, we are all guilty.
Yes.
So if all of us will put our hands on deck, we can make the Ghana what we want. Because you collect so much.
What's the rent tax?
Okay.
The rent tax.
The rent tax, if you look under section 115 of the rent tax, okay, it talks about withholding taxes. And then that withholding taxes is for residential and non-residential. The residential, you pay 8% of the rent advance you collect from any tenant. And then if it's a non-residential, being commercial, you pay 15%. So this is what the GRA has exposed. It has been our needs, rent control needs for a long time, as part of our cut
issue, the rent cut, which if your producers. So we talk about the rent card, which all landlords might issue within 2 weeks after the tenancy has been signed.
There's something called rent cut.
Rent cut.
That all landlords must issue to tenants.
Exactly.
Within
2 weeks.
2 weeks
after the tenancy has been signed. So this tenant should demand also from landlords. It's your right to demand this rent card after you made payment of rent advance.
What is it?
The rent card is a card, that has details of the landlord, details of the tenant. We have an emergency number or a guarantee number so that in case something happens to the tenant, you, the landlord, can fall on for an assistant. When you look inside the card, we have your monthly payment because rent comes in payment. Even if you pay 6 months rent advance, it must be distributed in monthly. And it comes in twos, The landlord will hold one, the tenant will hold one, so that there will be no dispute. That's it.
Okay, so, So if you pay in January, then it says month, amount paid, arrears outstanding, then date of payment, and then signature of the receiver. Okay, so you use this to sort of keep accounts.
Keep an account.
Okay, and then there are details for both the tenant and the landlord. And their addresses also. Okay. Right.
And we talked about the tenancy agreement, which is key. We talk about receipt of payment. So I'll give you the rent advance. Immediately the law demands that you give me receipt. And then the rent tax that we've just talked about. So it has been our needs, just as I mentioned.
You say every landlord is expected to issue this.
Exactly, mandatory.
They are supposed to get it from you.
Any of our offices.
Okay.
Let me help you.
There are 2 of them. Landlord keeps one, and then tenant keeps one.
Let me
All
help
right.
you here.
Yes, please.
By issuing of the receipt, it will even help the rent officer to even determine the 8% of your rent tax to the state. So it is our even mandate at time when a landlord comes and it's a problem of maybe the receipt. We only demand the receipt. Have you paid your rent tax? It's a no. Then you have to call in the GRA people to go and pay the tax before even handle the case. And
somebody sent in a question, is asking, are you available at the assemblies, district assemblies?
Oh, okay. Of late, yes. In fact, previously we were having problems over there, but now we've given them a series of letters through our mother ministry.
Who? You have given who letters?
The assembles, so through our mother ministry. So now the assembles are providing offices for us.
So you are not everywhere. You are now seeking to ensure that you are in the assemblies. You are not there.
Just in addition, just as I mentioned, we currently have 56 offices across the country. Of course, we are supposed to be in the 260 district, municipal, and metropolitan assemblies. But what we are doing is, we realize that cases does not come from all the assemblies. Sometimes for a whole year, only one case, like the northern parts. So what we do is that we look at a vantage assembly and then serve the adjacent assemblies.
All right.
So, but the discussion on the new act also mandates every district assembly to provide accommodation where we will send our expertise to come and
Mr. Mbofo had mentioned that the agents who lead people, they are entitled to only 5%.
Yes.
And the 5% is on the rent advance paid.
Yes.
It's not money that must come from...
No.
So it will not be paid out by the landlord?
No, it's paid by the landlord, not the tenant. The tenant, after the landlord have come in with the agent, it's the landlord responsibility to pay the agent.
Not the tenant instead?
Not the tenant. Instead.
Rather?
Just to add up to, I always cite this example of general insurance business. They have recruited and sent out this sales agent to go and fetch out clients for the insurance business. It's only when you bring a client that the client pays the premium, that a commission is given to you.
Right.
So if you look at section 25(1)(c), It said, being or acting as an agent or broker, or go between demand or receive for the services in connection with the procuring of any grant, renewal, continuance, or assessment of a tenancy, any condition which exceeds 5% per centum of the recoverable rent for a year of such premises. So if you go contrary to this, you commit an offense. What this means is that when you bring a client to the landlord and the person is satisfied with the condition, the tenancy is sealed, and the prospective tenant pays the rent, the landlord is supposed to give you 5% of that rent advance that has been paid. Of course, if the tenancy is signed for 2 years, you don't expect to be given 5% of the 2 years. What the law states is that you should be given 5% of 1 year rent. So if I come for 6 months, only 5% of the 6 months should be given to me. If I sign for 2 years and I'm paying for 6 months in block, I'll be giving the first 6 months and then the second 6 months. The rest, unless you bring somebody else. So the law says that you should be giving 5% of the rent advance. It's not your right to take 10% from the tenant, take 10% from the landlord, and even ask for moving fee.
Yes, moving
These are all illegal things.
That's why they are searching for it for you.
And they know you are looking for a single room. They will take you to a 2-bedroom house. You pay for it. They move you. Somebody complained of paying as much as 600 Ghana cedis just for moving fee. This has been realized. Discussions are ongoing. Very soon they will be trained properly. They will be licensed. They will be certified. Their names will be published. If you go contrary to these provisions, we will just withdraw your license and certificate, take your name from the list, and then those who want to deal with agents will look at the list and deal with accredited people. So Ghanaians should be assured that this problem has been identified. Measures have been taken to flush out these Goro boys in quote from our system.
Interesting. Yeah. So whilst we listen to them, they are the duty bearers. They've been given the responsibility to assist us, landlords and tenants. We have a role to play. If we don't insist on the right things, we may not get the right things done. So for me, that's important for all of us. But there are people who are afraid that once my landlord is doing something wrong and I report, it's going to lead into animosity and I will not be properly dealt with. They would actually eject me, move me from my house. What should I do?
You just come to rent control and file the case. No matter what the situation, the law is there to protect everybody. And as I said, we've got to know that it's purely inducing tenant to quit. It is an offense even, whereby we need to refer the matter. In fact, after giving recommendation...
What is it that you say is an offense?
The inducing tenant. It means that doing something to defray or to get the tenant out before his prescribed period.
Things like what?
For instance, disconnecting of his light. I will not allow you to bath in the bathroom. I've locked the toilet. I've done that. Trying to get him out.
Or I get loud music to your, your doorstep.
Second,
just to get you to move out.
Move out. So
that's inducing the tenant to move, and it's an offense.
It's an offense. So when such case is investigated properly, and we got to know it really that is so, we, the office, need to protect you.
Okay.
When it becomes worse, we'll refer to the matter.
What sort of protections do you offer to a person like that? Yes.
Okay. So just the inducement case, if you look at section 27 of the Rent Act, it says offense for inducing tenants to quit. Okay, so if a tenant has reported you for going contrary to the act, and you want to do things that will prompt the person to move out, constitute an inducement. And they said, every person who shall do any act whatsoever or refrain from doing anything which the condition of the tenancy requires him to do, with intent to compel the lessee of the premises to give out possession thereof, shall be guilty of an offense and shall, on conviction by the magistrate, be liable to a fine not exceeding 50 penalty unit, which is minimum 600 Ghana cedis, or an imprisonment. So if you report somebody and the person wants to induce you, do things that will prompt you to move out, falls under this act, where we can lie you before the magistrate for you to be prosecuted and then be fined or go to imprisonment. So this is the protection that
that one
surrounds.
I thought they would just make you pay the fine, which is up to 600 Ghana cedis, and it's okay. But imprisonment too is there.
No, there's no imprisonment here. It's only the fine of 600 Ghana.
Okay, right.
Just to caution you from
okay.
inducing anybody to quit.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We are going for a quick break. When we return, I will speak to Mr. Baini and let him take leave of us on the aspects of we're dovetailing affordable housing into this, what we can do, what the state can do to assist, to ameliorate the circumstances that many people find themselves in. And then we'll open the phone lines, you ask your questions, and then my guest will answer them. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's the most authoritative news analysis platform. And here on Newsfile, we put Ghana first. And like we have committed ourselves to do once in a while, like we did with the education on the land law to you, we are doing today rent, but putting a bit of the need for affordable housing into it. Now, the government has a policy. It's a 2019 policy where it says that the existing Rent Act is currently undergoing review to incorporate best practices from other countries. The review is intended to safeguard the rights of vulnerable tenants who have been outpriced by the uncomfortable hike in the cost of renting accommodation, and also ensure that property developers are not discouraged from investing in the housing industry by rigid rent control mechanisms that suppress chargeable rent to artificial levels. So very soon there's going to be a new law in which we understand that the 6 months will be moved to 1 year. So you don't charge rents advance more than 1 year. I will announce the lines, but don't call now. I'm going to speak to Mr. Baini briefly, and then we'll come, and then it will be just us with the rent officers here to continue to give you solutions. The lines to call, write it down, don't call, 030-221-1691, 030-221-1691, or 020-221-1692, 1692. Keep that. I'll announce shortly for you to come in with it. Thank you very much for your patience, Mr. Baini. Now, what's your solution to the affordable housing situation, the 2 million housing deficit, and the fact that about 60% of Ghanaians can't even afford them if they were made available, and they will need assistance to be able to afford?
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay. The government is, it's for government to provide that assistance. It will cost a whole lot of money, which I don't think we have. But government currently has put in place certain instruments that would help. For instance, the NHMF, which is the National Housing Fund, and will be able to help people get mortgages at subsidized rates for the lower end of the market. And so government has taken this segment of the market, and they are trying to fix the problem there. This segment of the market also includes majority of the lower end of affordability. And so it would go a long way to fix a lot of the problems. But it then leads into supply and where those houses are going to come from. As Greda has actually been speaking with government, with the current minister, and there's a lot of headway is being made. Government has recently acquired 4,500 acres around the Accra and Kumasi area for affordable housing, which will meet the criteria for the affordable housing products that government has made available through the Ministry of Finance. They've also set up a real estate investment trust, which would help administer the whole framework which they put in place. And so government is doing its bit. The private developer is also doing a lot and is also able to provide housing, but the capacity to provide what is actually needed is not there, even if we are looking at just the 40% who can afford. But Thompson, if we look at the market, you would hardly find anyone who says, I can afford to buy a home, I'm gainfully employed, and I can afford this that costs dollars, but can't find one. Demand, and I talk about effective demand for developers who are playing in the affordable housing area. Overboard, and that is why the prices have remained where they are. People are building houses for $35,000, $40,000 and putting them, and I use dollars advisedly, and I know you will take me up with that. I use that advisedly.
Right.
So, yes.
In fact, people are charging rent in dollars.
Yes, that is not allowed by law. The Ministry of Finance looks very dimly upon that, and if you are caught, it could be problematic.
Right.
So what people sometimes say is they link it to the dollar, and it's basically because, for instance, for the property developed, a facility denominated in dollars.
Right.
To be able to get an interest rate they can work with. Okay?
Yeah.
They can't, when they come out and they delink or they are lending currency from what is actually on the ground, they get into problems with their lenders because what you collect today is not worth what you collect tomorrow.
All right. So in a minute, tell me or re-emphasize what you started earlier with. How can the rent control department and everybody ensure that the rent laws are working?
The rent control department, like they've also alluded to, I mean, their capacity is not there to meet what to do what the law is asking them to do. But I feel that we are over-regulating in the sense that if we are asking agents to collect no more than 5%, okay, then we are capping their income. And very soon they will add to the demand for affordable housing themselves because they will not be making enough money. Now, agents typically will charge a month's rent. And, that is what pertains in the marketplace. But the law is saying that they'll go to prison. They charge a month's rent. And so we realize that we are getting into areas or commercial areas, maybe the framers of the law had not particularly intended it to be such.
Okay.
So
I suppose we'll have to take time and deal with this aspect of the housing provision, which is your area of comfort. Thank you so very much, Kujobaini, Director, Vine CBH Group, and immediate past Executive Council member of GREDA. Thank you so very much, sir.
Having me.
Right. Now, the phone lines are active. You can call and ask your question. Put it directly to Emmanuel or Mr. Ampofo, 030-221-1691 or 1692. And as the calls come in, there's Eduanaba Kweku Amponsa. He says that I rented a house. It's my landlord being fair to me. I rented a room for 2 years and paid. This was in 2019. And my rent will expire on the 1st of September 2021. My landlord gave me a letter last month that he wants to do renovation in my room, so I should move. I should move when my rent expires, i.e. 1st of September. Is the landlord being fair to me? Yes.
The landlord, the law states clearly that when you mention of renovation, it's fall under section 17 I and I3. But the point is you have to give the notice to quit to the tenant after the lease, after the period rented or the prescribed period.
Okay.
And the 6 months will follow after the lease. So he has no right to.
All right. Julius, you're calling from Accra. Julius, what's your question?
I rented my place to a tenant for a period of 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And after a lapse of the place, he pleaded for another 3 months, which he was supposed to pay. He didn't pay. Now we are in the 4th month, and he has locked my place and traveled. I can't find him anywhere.
All right. What should you do? All right. We have Daniel. You're calling from Medina. Hello, Daniel.
Yes. They are saying that agents have to take their money from the... Yes, I'm saying that they're saying that agents must take their money from the landlords. However, if the tenants or potential tenants are asking agents to do them a service, must do them a service, so the agent will be going around to look for accommodation for them. I think that service must be paid for because he's going around to look for something for you. He may not have had it already.
All right.
Also,
thank you.
Landlord can
Thank you. I'll take only a question from each person. Patrick. Hello, Patrick. You're calling from Tema.
Yes, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Please, I rented a place for 2 years. Ever since I moved into the room, whenever it rains, when I'm not in, all my stuff will get wet. I've been complaining to my landlord, and then he is always saying that we the tenants in the house, are disturbing him. Moreover, our manhole, ever since I moved in about 4 months now, we've taken the water out 3 times. This is a major problem. Our landlord is always saying that we shouldn't call him and then say anything to him.
Okay, thank you. Your point is noted. Okay, so you can take Julius. Julius says we are done. Julius says that he paid for 2 years. He gave his land for his house for a room for 2 years. The person, it expired. The person pleaded for three months or so. Yeah. Now he's gone and he's locked the place. What should he do?
Okay. So this is a typical what we call an abscondant case. Julius should quickly come to the rent control department. We'll follow the due process and force opening the door.
Okay.
Julius cannot go there and force open the door because the tenant can come that something is missing.
All right.
So Julius should quickly come to the rent control office. The issue about agents is that always the landlord who contracts agents to get prospective tenant for them. If you bring a post that you are an agent, which means you have vacant premises available, and then somebody calls you now before you are going to look for, then you can't call yourself an agent.
Okay.
So tenant has no right to pay that percentage to the agent.
Okay.
And then the issue about renovation, this must be spelled out in the tenancy agreement. The responsibility of maintenance should be spelled out in the tenancy agreement. So if it comes to interior maintenance that the landlord has given you the right to do, then you have to do it. If it's external one, like this manhole, it's a sole responsibility of the landlord.
And
if
the
the
leakage,
tenants
and the leakage too.
And the leakage too is the responsibility of the landlord.
If the landlord is not doing, I'm the one living in. I get
But of course, you have to be compensated for the rent advance you've paid. And if the landlord is not forfeited dues,
come to the rent control department. We'll invite him, do our investigation, and then we apply the law where it needs to be.
You could allow Patrick to do it by himself, and then it will become rent.
Exactly.
Okay.
So all
Exactly.
must
So
be
the
in the
person
agreement.
Is, Patrick is the one living in the room for now.
Right.
He is suffering from the problem. So the question is, if you have asked the landlord to maintain that very particular damage and he's not doing anything, we only invite the landlord to the office. His failure to come, we only ask the tenant to maybe come with expertise for us to maybe assess the
Entry James says that he has rented an apartment, he doesn't like it anymore. What should he do? He wants his money back and then to go.
Okay. Entry, has he paid in advance?
Yes, he's paid.
Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, as the law states, no one have to take rent advance more than whatever.
6 months.
6 months. So Entry have paid the money. This case do happen. You have taken 6 months advance. Now the tenant want to go. It will be either he has got a transfer from his office, or he has to travel elsewhere. You cannot say that you can't refund the money. Entry should report to the office and we'll make enforcement to take the money for him.
Okay. We just have run out of time. We didn't know that this is how we're getting to. So let's take your final word. Okay. What are your expectations of tenants and landlords, generally?
Okay. Well, the landlords and tenants are all our friends, so far as the rent control is concerned. So we are only urging them that the rent control is open for everybody. If you found out that somebody is actually harassing you in your house, taking rent in advance, doing which is contrary to the law, please, you can come to rent control and we'll help you out.
Right. What would you have to say?
So something. Let me assure Ghanaians that there is this National Rental Assistance Scheme, which is under discussion, which is going to solve this short to medium term rent advance payment, but people who can be guaranteed of paying their rent advance. The digitalization of the rent control department is also going to speed up our processes. But what I want to end with is that we all have responsibility to make sure the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal is achieved. If you look at the first target of Goal 11, it states by 2030, we should ensure access for all to adequate, safe, and affordable housing. Okay? As a landlord, you have a responsibility to make sure the rooms you give out, you don't overcharge. As a tenant, you have a responsibility to make sure that where you go and rent, you leave it as tenantable as you go and meet it. Myself, as a rent officer, I should make out that I control the rent that landlords charge or tenants pay. So let's all put our hands on deck. It's a country all of us want to fix. So let's put our hands on deck so that we can fix the country as we want it to be.
Thank you very, very much for coming and helping educate our audiences. You heard Chum Ampofo, who is Chief Rent Officer, Rent Control Department, to my left, and Emmanuel Hove Posu, who is Head Public Relations, Rent Control Department. Earlier, you heard Kojo Baini, who is Director and former executive member of the Council of the Greda. And as always, let's all be citizens, okay? Let's not be spectators. Let's contribute to ensure that the laws are working. If a landlord is breaking the law, report them and let the right things be done. If a tenant is breaking the law, report them and let the right things be done. Don't take the law into your own hands. This show has been brought to you by Bank of Africa, strong as a group and close as a partner, MTN everywhere you go, Ashesi University, educating ethical and entrepreneurial leaders, Robert and Sons, seeing is believing, way lead, home is where you start, Star Assurance, that's your solid partner, First Code Management Service, Industry Get It Right, the New School, Knowledge, Compassion, Leadership, Duraplus, where Duraplus goes, water flows. And my outfit that many of you are talking about is by Habil's Couture. Habil's Couture. You can call them on 0200 84 1988 0200 841988. You can find them at Adringano, opposite Villa David. Go there and get the best of dress like this for yourself. Thank you very much. I'm Samson Ladia Yanini. God willing, next week we come your way with another edition of Newsfile.